Okay, I might think we might get started. So welcome everyone to this user group meeting tonight. We're very pleased to be able to continue doing these events virtually, and hopefully as the uh, COVID situation improves, maybe by next year, early next year, we'll be able to start having these events live again, and then you don't have to look at a virtual pizza. You'll be able to look at have some real pizza and beer before we get going. So Damien normally gives the presentation of the news events, which is how we normally start our meeting, but it appears Damien's detained tonight, so you're going to have to kind of put up with me doing it. So just bear with me because Damien did put the content together, which is great, but I'm seeing it for the first time. So we'll see how we go with that. Just wanted to let you know the meeting is being recorded, but because this is a live event, it won't be showing any of your identities. You won't be able to see any of that on the screen. And what we'll do is take me a few days, maybe a week. I'll get the recording posted up on our YouTube site. You'll be able to see it there. So with that, we'll kick off with our session. So welcome, as I said, to the Brisbane Azure User Group meetup. This is basically a little bit of a 10-minute news roundup because the cloud moves fast. So what we try to do is each meeting we cover some of the bigger things that have happened in Azure over the last 30 days. By no means is it comprehensive. We just pick a few things that look like they're of interest, but I'll show you resources at the end of this deck that you can go to yourself and catch up on all the announcements and the blog posts. We do want to thank our sponsors. So normally, if we were meeting live, Microsoft would be giving us a venue, which is really nice to them because that's worth a lot. But Codify does give us a stipend, and that pays for things like our meetup subscription. It would pay for pizza and beer if we were together, and we'll hopefully continue to do so when we start having live meetings again. Being a community group, we always invite people to get involved. So we've got, as you can see, we've had a really full year. We haven't missed I don't think we've missed a single month, actually, even with COVID. So that's been really, really good. Actually, sorry, we did miss April. But we've had a great array of speakers, both from the community and outside the community, who have stood up to come and give us presentations, and we're very, very grateful for that. But we're always looking to get people from within the community who want to come up and speak. And you don't even have to do an entire session like for the whole evening. You don't have to have a 45-minute or hour presentation. Even a short one is always welcome. We can fit that in pretty easily. So, and next month, traditionally, for the December meetup, that's exactly what we do, is we get about 5 or 6 people who are willing to give a short presentation, kind of a sort of a short TED talk or whatever for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes on something interesting that they discovered, or maybe something they've done at work, or maybe just a new bit of Azure technology that they're interested in and wanted to share what they've learned with the group. So if you are interested in that, please get in touch with us. There is the email address, nice and simple. That's BAUG stands for Brisbane Azure User Group, and you can send either an email to that, or on the meetup site, just send me a message, or just post something in the group. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll get in touch with you. We'd love to have some really good topics, and not just have the leaders always being the ones to speak. So let us know if you've got something for that. So with that, I'm going to launch into the updates. So as I said, I'm kind of reading these for the first time, so try to bear with me. But obviously, we've got some new Azure VM types that have gone GA, which are memory optimized. So there's some details there about that. So there's some cost reductions apparently. And these slides will be shared. I will post them, and you'll have the link to it in the chat, the comments on the meetup for this event. So you'll be able to download these slides and then access those links and get all the real details about this new offering. We've also got a zone redundant Azure cache for Redis, which has come out in preview. So this is good for those geographic areas that have availability zones. This is a great new feature where you can have that kind of distribution and have some resiliencies built into there for your Redis cache. We've also got a modular data center that's gone GA. So if you need, I guess, to set up a data center out in the outback or something like that, you have the ability to do this if you need to. It looks pretty interesting. And Azure is going into the space age with GA with Microsoft and SpaceX to launch the Azure Space, which is now GA. And I think this is a video, so we'll just play it, see if it works. Sorry, interrupted that by mistake. Let's just go back a slide. Try it again. Sorry about that. Okay, so with that, I was going to talk a little bit about some upcoming events that are happening here in the Brisbane area. So we've got the Artificial Intelligence Bootcamp coming up. Again, this will be a virtual event, as you can imagine. There's the URL for it. There's actually 2 days set aside for this, so you can do Friday afternoon to evening, or you could do Saturday as well. And I think they might even have a different focus. But if you check out that website, you'll find out the details there about that. Also, we've got tomorrow night, we've got our monthly webcast happening with the Integration Down Under group, which is it's a group of Azure MVPs that are focused on Microsoft integration. And tomorrow we have Wagner Severa, who's from New Zealand, and he's going to talk all about the Logic Apps VS Code extension. So that QR code there will take you to the website, or you could just look up Integration Down Under and go to the website, and then you can register for it there. We also have all of the previous webcasts that we have are recorded, and they're also up on that same site. So there's a wealth of content there to check out. And then we have the DevOps Virtual Summit that's coming up at the end of the month. So again, you can sign up for this. There's 2 days of content here. So day 1 is recommended for developers, and day 2 is more focused for solution architects, software engineering managers, and tech managers. Again, just follow that website, and you can find out all the details about that. And I think I already said I'll post these slides up with the link on the meetup comments for this, so you'll be able to access these. And if you want to delve into any more sources or look up more announcements and stuff, there's a few things available to you. First of all, we've got the Azure Australia Slack team, which is a great resource for you to connect with other people connected who are interested in Azure. There's a Q&A channel on there, and we get a lot of people who post questions. We got people from Microsoft on that who come in and give answers, as well as lots of other Azure MVPs and experts. So that's a great resource that's available to you. We've got our YouTube channel for this user group, and here's where we put all our recordings, including this one. Tonight will be up there within a week, so please have a look and subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of videos up there already. And then if you're looking to learn more about Azure, you've always got Microsoft Learn available to you, which is tons and tons of free content up there that you can use. And if you don't mind paying for stuff, you can also access some great courses on Pluralsight or Opsgility. And if you want to know where we get a lot of our information from these updates, you can just follow the Azure blog or either the 2 Scots blogs, which are very, very rich in content. So, and I see we've recently had a DIT Ops talk blog as well. So with that, with no further ado, we're going to go into the main event tonight. So we're very, very privileged to have Errol LeBoydre tonight. And he's going to talk to us all about streaming analytics and Event Grid, and talking about a real world scenario and how they made some decisions to come up with the best solution for that. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Errol now.
Thanks, Dan. If you can hear me okay, just going to hit share.
Fantastic, and then there's your content. I'll just add here.
Okay, how's that look? You got that up?
Yep, now we got your slides.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks, Dan, and thanks to Damien for this opportunity. I always love talking about stuff in Azure. Also want to thank you guys for hanging in there during isolation and COVID and keeping this virtual. Be very exciting once we get back to being physical and have some real meetings. But maintaining the momentum has been a bit of a challenge, so that's great. Also, I want to thank the sponsors. As Dan said before, without the sponsors, these things don't go ahead. So just for me personally, thanks for those guys. This agenda for this session is a little bit different to normal, which I'll go through in a second. There's my details. I think most of you know me, but I'm looking after a business in Brisbane called Wireless. and we specialise in information management across very complex systems and environments. The Azure sort of platform has helped us out a great deal over the last couple of years, and we see a lot more potential for that. So the agenda is, as we said, it's about streaming analytics and event grid. I'm going to relate this to an actual scenario, business scenario, and talk through some of the decisions that we made and decisions that we're still looking to make, I guess. It's okay to talk about cool Azure stuff, but in the end, it only exists to solve problems. While I'm a techno nut, my primary skill set is about understanding problems and scenarios within business and governments, and then working out the best way to solve those. So the challenge that we have, I see, with Azure services and platforms isn't that it doesn't work. It's brilliant technology, but it's becoming a little hard to keep abreast of the capabilities of some of these services. And I definitely find that a little bit, although it's still part of the challenge. So quite often, we have a problem to solve, and it's like, well, what do we use to solve that problem? So we're going to talk into the business problem first of all, and it's going to step outside the Microsoft space a little bit, but nevertheless, that's the problem that we're looking to address. And I'll go through what that is, and sort of highlight the challenge that we have. Then I'll talk about streaming analytics a bit, go into some of that pros and cons. Then I'll do the same with Event Grid. After streaming analytics and the Event Grid, we might just pause, and if anyone's got any contributions or questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. Dan will sort those out for us. Also, if you guys have got any contributions, this is I think the benefit of doing these sessions is collaborative. So if anyone's got any experiences or got anything to add, please speak up. Then we'll get into the best for the job, and it's the best for the job as it stands today based upon our findings, and then some Q&A and some summary if that's needed. So as I said before, one of the problems we have with this platform, and it's not a problem, it's great. It's like having the Meccano set and you don't know where to start. All of these services and all of these offerings, quite often they overlap each other. So this particular session is about event routing. So it's about sort of working out the best way to take a stream of events from an application and then actually that. The product that we're talking about is an old Hewlett-Packard or Micro Focus product called Content Manager. And we've dealt with this product for about 10 or 12 years. And it's a government enterprise type product that deals with records and document management. More often than not, we're getting the requests and we're getting the scenarios of like, how do we then integrate, how do we then extend this product into other areas of the enterprise? Now, the product Content Manager, it's very rich with its event offering, but that's all it does. It says, hey, here is a bunch of events. You guys who want to extend it, the product, or you want to integrate with it, or customize it, it's up to you then to look at those events and make some decisions on those. Content Manager has what's we call as an event processor, so we can write some code, I guess, around these events, and we can make some decisions in a code-based type scenario. Which, as we know, would be, as an assembly type scenario, it becomes a development effort and development process. So what happens if we want to write some code to react to an event to solve a problem, but then we times that by 20 or 40 or 50, all of a sudden our management of code base, management of assembly development, and the complexity of this, as it stands, gets to a point where it's almost impossible. It's not impossible, it's really hard to get it over the line. So one of the things that we look to do is to say, we want to find a way where we can extend these events from this product in a really quickly and easy fashion. So if the start of a week someone said, hey, we've got a process that we need to fix or to even work on, we've got an integration piece that needs to happen, what's the fastest way we can actually do that? Like I said in the previous slide, we can write some code and we can do it that way, but it becomes a little hard to manage. So Concept Manager is a product based upon a whole range of objects that make up its DNA. You know, it has records and locations and schedules, etc. Then for each one of these objects, it has tens and hundreds of events. So every single thing that happens in this product has an event that we can react to. So I guess going back some time now, what we did was we said, we could write some code within the actual application to react to each business scenario. Or what if we just sent all the events into a platform, and obviously Azure is the one, and then we work out a way then to create a business rule scenario on those events, which is away from the application. So it's isolated, I guess. So going back in the day, the first thing that I thought about was, well, hey, there's this product called Streaming Analytics. And I know that this, from digging under the hood a little bit, Streaming Analytics probably was built to manage IoT Hub events, which is those just large volume events coming from small devices, etc. But when you can see that there's a natural fit of a Streaming Analytics to actually take events from an event hub, all of a sudden now that the scenario of Streaming Analytics changes. It changes into something that is quite simple to actually put in place and to work with. So Streaming Analytics is 3 ways we can get data in. It's from event hubs, blob storage, and IoT hubs. The connection to an event hub to actually start to stream those events it is point and click, and I'll show you this in the portal a bit further down. So what that means is if we can get events into an event hub, Streaming Analytics can then will give us the option to make some decisions on. The other reason why Streaming Analytics was chosen as our best way to do this was because of all the options of delivering something after we analyse those events. And more often than not, it was about sending a sequence of events or parameters to a function or a durable function to be then managed. And that became the real business rule management of events. As you can imagine, with Content Manager and having so many different event types and different object types, there are the stream of these. I mean, it's not the same as being an IoT hub, but it's still significant. Every time someone logs on, every time someone does something within the product, it has significant audit trails. Every document, every record, everything, all those events, they start to add up, but they become a big mess or big swimming pool of events. So how do we then take those and create a scenario where business rules can be set in an ad hoc fashion quickly to achieve either an integration or make a process more efficient? And I guess that's one of the other motivations for this is that to get process efficiency and process improvement and continual process improvement, we need to have a way with this product and with our clients to be able to say, hey BA or hey Mr. User, we've got something that need to be fixed, or we've got an idea to improve a process. So how do we do that quickly? Now, if we're going to go into a code development scenario, you start that long journey of getting approval, etc. So we're looking for a way to be able to very quickly create a rule on an event to achieve something. When we first started to look at Streaming Analytics, the reason why it becomes attractive is one, we can create many different inputs into Streaming Analytics. We can then write some query language on those and then send it to any particular output that we like. So this really put us in place to be able to write some queries based upon our knowledge of the events, which then was a reactionary type of process. So we were up and running, and we were creating some business rules in the Azure platform based upon these events really quite quickly. So if this is just event routing, obviously the management of that data based upon events sat very squarely on either function apps or logic apps, etc. But there's a bunch more other stuff that we did as well. The problem with this, of course, is that you've got to have a fairly good understanding of the event schema and the objects and be able to write some query language. So it's still fairly fast, but this is the problem that I'm looking to solve. Is how do I create a scenario that understands the event schema and then allows a power user perhaps to then say, okay, I need to be able to create a card or something based upon this scenario. The other reason that streaming analytics become attractive to solving this is that one of those query types was writing R language. So we quite literally wrote windows for continual data streaming in the Power BI. So one of the first things we did with Content Manager was to say, hey, now you've got some event data live streaming to the Power BI. So that became an attractive feature to it as well. So then Event Grid, well, Event Grid's been around for some time, but I'd start to ask the question, well, Event Grid is a great service, another service, of course, and it's got some really attractive features, not just about pricing and the fact that it is serverless, so if you don't use it, you don't pay for it. But the ability for Event Grid to have retries and the ability for Event Grid to not have to be polled for data, but as a consumer of an event, I can subscribe to an Event Grid, and then as that happens, I can be notified and I can perform the similar action. So I've become very interested in sort of using Event Grid to maybe replace some of those aspects in streaming analytics. So I have hit some problems with that in terms of like how easy is it to do. So at this stage, we would say that Event Grid hasn't replaced streaming analytics, but I still believe this would be the way that we'll sort of head further into this scenario. One of the reasons for doing this, of course, is like the retry and the subscriber-based system is if we have one event that creates a process and it happens once a week, then with an Event Grid it fires once. That's simple. The problem I found with Event Grid was that when I'm trying to separate 50 different objects, and each one of those has 100 different events or actions, it becomes difficult to work out then how to separate those into an Event Grid where you've got a subscriber or multiple subscribers. The other thing that I found with Event Grid, separate to streaming analytics, is that the schema base is really important. So, and I'll show you this if you go into the portal and have a look at it, but there are natural connections into Event Grid which are system based. So for example, if we're sending an event which is that a VM has changed size, and I just send that to Event Grid, it has a schema from that event, from that system object, which it understands. When we actually decide to try and separate this from streaming analytics, it becomes a little difficult then to say, hey, this is a schema for Event Grid. Here are the actions I need to work on, but the schema itself isn't that easy to work on. So that's streaming analytics and that's Event Grid, both kind of important to what we're doing. What is interesting is the fact is the importance of event hubs in this whole pipeline. And when I first put down this title, I was very interested in just pulling apart streaming analytics and grids. But in reality, the Event Hub, which really is the starting point for data pipeline management, is probably our saviour for this business scenario. If I was to go back to that other slide, talk about sending all my events from Content Manager into the portal, it becomes a very simple one call to an endpoint, and then Event Hubs will take that and manage it. So within the Event Hub system, we can have different separations of events based upon a number of factors. This becomes a super advantage with streaming analytics because, as we saw when we first went into it, it's a natural ingester. When you create a streaming analytics job and you select an Event Hub, you quite literally point and click and decide on which of the actual events, the topics that you've selected, and then pick a consumer group, and then you're off and running. It just manages it after that. So the Event Hubs, it stores all of our data, which we saw in the JSON file, in a really nice format. And as we said before, the event type, all of these becomes the base of the query that we need to write to then perform an action. Okay, so I'm going to just change that slide now just to go back and get into the portal. Let's stop that. So Dan, I did skip over a little bit. I was supposed to stop after streaming analytics. I'm not sure if there's any questions or queries at this stage.
There are no questions, no.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. No. So no questions so far.
All right, let's just go back. I'm just going to go back. I'm going to actually delve into the portal itself. Just break that. Start a different one. Okay, so let's have a look at the services in the portal and have a look at what they mean to us. We're talking about streaming analytics and event grid, and we'll go and pull those apart in more detail. But I really want to start off with the Event Hub because this is the collection point that makes life easy for us. As I said, the JSON files or the JSON packages for each event that comes out of Content Manager is really small. It's I forget the size of it, but it's less than 64K. And typical of event management, what we get in that event is just enough description to be able to make decisions on it. So with event routing, we don't want the entire process of what's happening. We just need to be able to say, what does this relate to? What is the change? What is the impact? And from there, we then go and make those decisions. So sending those events to the Event Hub allows us then to then separate where they come from and then make some more decisions on those. One of the things about Event Hubs, like I said, this is the portal, I guess, or the starting point for event management. So they get dumped into here, and then you make a decision as to what happens. Each of the event hubs that we set up has a message retention time frame, and the costing of this, I'll go through that a bit later. But the more you want to store it in event hubs, and the more you have, obviously, the more it costs. But quite typically, for our scenario, we don't need to keep it for any longer than a day or 2 days. This particular one down here for 7 days, that was more of a testing scenario. We had a fairly large ingestion type happening, monitoring from different applications, and hence why we've got a petition count. So petition count just allows us to have better performance as it's spread across the different petitions. So sending it. Let's click on an event hub. And I'm sure most of you have seen event hubs. We're able to monitor the ingestion of that, and it's just, I will never hit a limit on sending events to these hubs that causes a problem. I mean, they generally can manage millions of events a second. So this scenario we're dealing with is nowhere near that. It really is lightweight, I guess. It still doesn't solve the problem of actually trying to create a business rule to react to an event in a simple fashion. Something to point out, which is a bit of a trick on when we are consuming event hubs from streaming analytics, is that we can create multiple consumer groups under a hub. And this is kind of important because when we go, and I'll show you streaming analytics, there's a limit there to how many queries I can write as an input on this. So we can create as many consumer groups as we like, and each one of those becomes a parallel ingestion type for streaming analytics. So event hubs has been the base of this. And look, what I didn't go and talk about to start with perhaps is the fact that there are lots of different ways of managing events. There are queues and service buses, etc. But based upon the need to have a function or logic app react and consume to that event, this is the path we got to. So look, this seems all pretty simple. Once again, it's the whole point of clicking. We have to write a lot of code for this. The code that we wrote for to get the data in was, hey, an event's happened. Put it into an object, a model, and then send it to the endpoint. So when we come into streaming analytics, and this is directly on the portal, it actually presents quite simple compared to other services. It's not really under the hood, and how it's managed and why it's efficient is incredible. The amount of work that happens behind the scenes. That there are all the processing and all the actual compute and all the stuff that happens under the hood happens across different servers and different platforms. But for us as a consumer of the service, we just want to make something happen quite quickly. The concept of streaming analytics is very simple. I have an input, and I can write a query on that. Based upon the query, I can send the event to an output. Right. So, I mean, if you think about it, let's go to my inputs. So my inputs, one of my inputs is that event hub, and you can see all of my inputs here for this particular service are all from event hubs. We look at that initial diagram where it was event hubs, IoT hubs, and blobs. For us, this is just what we need to do. So if I go and have a look at this, you can see that to connect to my event hub from streaming analytics, I filled this out. Right? I got the key, I got some stuff. It's not really stuff, it's better than that. Went to my event hub, which I just showed you, looked at the access key. I told it that it's a JSON file, got some encoding, and that was it. So at that stage, once I've done that and I've actually said to streaming analytics, hey, start or stop, my inputs are now coming in. Now it's interesting that what streaming analytics does to that event is to add some more data to it to say that it's being managed and it's being handled. So if I turn off streaming analytics, when I turn it back on again, it then picks up that stream and that sequence of events. So once we've got some input there and we've got some stuff coming in streaming analytics, so how do we route that out? And this is the crux of the problem, or the crux of the scenario. Right, so if I look at my query tag and I look at the particular inputs and outputs, we can now write some queries on this data. Now I know this schema and I know these events very well. So this is the problem that I'm trying to solve. how do I take that into a scenario which a power user or an admin user of the product can actually then go and say, you know what, I need to create a reaction to an event. Right, so in this particular one here, I'm taking some stuff from my events teams. I'm going to put it into my output, which is down here. I'm going to select some fields that I need, and I'm going to create some conditions. Now, I write this like I'm just an admin user clicking on buttons in the application, but I know the reality is that's not that easy. So when I can create an interface or a form where I can actually adjust or change this, then we're in a better place. So when we say we go select that into this from is from the Event Hub stream, and the Event Hub stream can come from many different consumers. Then we can say, where do you want to put this? And these are the different outputs. So out of the box, it's still running. So out of the box, table storage, Power BI, Event Hubs, functions. So most of the stuff we do obviously is in functions. When we send those conditions to a function and say, hey, now perform these business rules, please, based upon my event query. So yeah, so this is I guess where I'm still stuck and I still can't work it out, but nevertheless, this is the progress of solving a problem. As well as writing the queries, when we come into streaming analytics, we're actually able to view the events and do testing on those events and have a look at raw data directly in streaming analytics. So this is very powerful. If I go and write query, and it can be as simple as, this is an interesting particular query. So I take everything from my event monitor, which is just another hub, and then put it into another monitor. So this is taking every event into a hub and placing it into a different hub. Now, in reality, that was more of a test to show something than it actually making any sense. One hub to another hub, but we can definitely pick things up and move them into different outputs. So outputs, queries. So, you know, when you look at and gloss over streaming analytics, it just seems quite simple, but there is a lot more to it, obviously, and we'll take a fair bit of time to delve into that. And it's efficient, it just works. The pricing on that is pretty good. You know, I think streaming analytics, it's not serverless as such. It's got streaming units. It's got it's a bit like the whole streaming unit thing. It's got some compute, some storage, and some stuff. But I think $30 for one streaming unit, and then it comes down to about 19 cents an hour or something. You know, so for a month we can do these things at less than $60, and that is taking events and actually distributing them to different outputs. Like I said, there's a bunch more stuff against here which we can do, which take a fair bit of time to go into. So that's streaming analytics. Now, when we said, hey, look, let's look at Event Grid to say, is this an option then to take what we do in streaming analytics and put it into an Event Grid scenario? Like I said, the problem became, how do I then separate all of those event objects into different outputs? We can have multiple subscriptions, and we can filter on those. So if I go to here, right? So event grids are pretty cool, and we do some of those for one-off type processing. But when I need to make a decision about, for example, having 10 different subscribers to an event grid, and each subscriber's got a different set of conditions, we can go in there and we can filter what comes into an event grid. And what I believe we'll end up doing with this is that filtering isn't that user friendly. So, so for example, this is an event grid which also natively connects to hubs, and you'll see here the event types. So this particular subscription, it subscribes to when an event hub is created. Now, even the event types, if you don't know that the event type in Microsoft is event hub.capture file created, then you're pretty stuck. It's not hard to find, and it can actually interact with, you can actually naturally hook in with a bunch of stuff. But for this case, it wasn't that easy. In terms of the schema type is pretty important. I think I've said this earlier with event grids. So you can have a custom schema, which then means you're actually sending event grid a custom schema, but then you've still got to wrap that around some of that JSON schema stuff that I showed you before. So I found this a little difficult to work with in terms of the problem I was trying to solve. And while it might end up being the solution, at this stage it's not. We can subject filter it, so I can go to every particular event, and I can create a filter based upon the subject. Now, the subject in this case means it's the native schema out of Azure for a system event, which is a little different again to having a custom schema. And then we can do some advanced filtering. So I think once I get to a point where I can actually read a schema and read the fields that we need, and then be able to go and say, well, hey, let's drill this down and create some. So, for example, key here, key might be who knows, record something or other. And I can go where the string is in. So we can do some work there to filter those events. But it's just not as easy as going to the streaming analytics and building up a query to take an input and move it to an output. One of the reasons I do like event grids, apart from the fact that it creates a subscriber for each particular set, which doesn't work as well as I'd like for our scenario. But if I'm creating a function app or a logic app, and something happens at the event grid then matches that subscriber, then a bit like a webhook scenario, you get notified it's happened. And if the end point that needs to go to doesn't pick up on it, then you can set retry policies, and there's a range of things you can do. That makes event grids a really super efficient and very robust way of doing things. I'm just trying to find a way to use that better with our scenario. I think the other thing about event grids, which is super cool and just makes it work anyway, is the fact that all the particular system objects that it can naturally relate to. But I think there's some work in the portal on this, and I'm not sure how event grids work as a Visual Studio or Visual Code type project. I haven't tried that as yet, but if anyone's done that, I'd be interested to hear how that sits. So yeah, and then with event grids, we can come back and we can actually in terms of authentication, we can give it a managed identity. We can set the retry policies, etc., etc. So look, I love event grids, especially now that we can actually replace a subscription to a graph notification. For example, if there's a change to a message in a Teams channel, we can subscribe to that now through the graph. But before you had to have your own endpoint, and now with event grids, I can just put in an event grid endpoint, which means that if a message was to change in the channel in Teams, then event grid gets notified, and then your process after that gets notified that it's changed. So there's a bunch of work we're doing around there, which is pretty cool as well. Okay, so I think I've probably covered these and talked them to death a little bit, but this has been the journey for us on trying on a particular business problem, And what I find interesting is that all of this technology is uber cool, and it's very exciting for us techno nuts. But one of the things that we try and work with is actual business scenarios, and trying to explain these capabilities and trying to make it simple for business users who make these process decisions. When we get to a point that the people who question how they do things in a business, who want to improve a process, continually improve a process, see opportunity for change, integration, etc. There's a gap there between those people and us at the moment. So we'll get to that. I'll just pause for a second, Dan. I just want to see once again if there's any questions or comments.
No, not yet. You've done such a great job of explaining things.
Yeah, well, you know, you feel like these are little rabbit holes as you sort of head down one. You got to be careful because you don't know where you end up. But you know yourself, Dan, that these services are compared to what we used to use to achieve these sort of things, going back 5 or 10 years ago. They're phenomenal services. We just need to make sure that the people who have the business problems understand them.
Exactly.
I'm going to come back to here. I just want to go back and have a look again back at my PowerPoint, because now that I've showed you those, some of these other slides will make a bit more sense. I've got to click through it. That's right. So, like I said, even though streaming analytics is a simple process for us to use to then route business needs, the simplicity of it is taking this event from a custom event processor and content manager, and then modeling out all of these fields, which are just stock standard, and then sending it to an event hub endpoint, which is here. So that's as simple as it is for us to then stream these events from this third-party application that really doesn't understand what anyone needs to do with events. We've done some pretty complex stuff with event management under custom processing. But like I said at the start of this, the process, anytime you get into the long development process, it's hard work. It's easier than it used to be, but it's still hard work. So to have an ability where we can actually say, and this is content manager, but it could be anything. You know, one of the examples I've done recently, which is a Microsoft example for streaming analytics, is take some IoT hub telemetry, and then there's this little app that you can go and find. It just punches millions of events into streaming analytics, and then you can start to play with that, start to separate and work what you need to do. So all of these events here are stock standard out of Concept Manager, except for one where, because we do a lot of record type work, I actually injected the actual record type URI, which is an identifier, into this packet. You know, that kind of breaks the rule about having a single simple entry, single point. Now that I've customized this, it's a little bit wrong. And the way we get around that originally is we get this particular event. I say, hey, it's a record event, and the event is that it's an object being added, which means there's a new record being added. So what do I want to do from that? I could then go and say, well, go and find the identifier and actually find that record to make a decision. This is just a bit of a shortcut on that. Some of the things that we're doing with these custom events now that we're coming into Azure in the platform, is we're doing things like sending events into Sentinel to have a look at the client's IP address. So every client that uses Content Manager, either the desktop client or multiple browser versions or custom versions of that, when an event's created, the user IP, the user address, all the information that we need is naturally embedded in that event. So one of the things we've had a look at and play with content managers to say, you know, for a particular user, for a particular IP, that has a pattern. Now we start to say, well, hang on a second, all of a sudden that user now has an IP which is in, I don't know, pick a country that we shouldn't, that they shouldn't be there. Doesn't really matter. Somewhere in Alaska or Siberia, sorry. So yesterday a user was in Brisbane, and tomorrow they're in Siberia. So that's obviously not a problem. That's where Sentinelize and other service comes into play, and sort of managing this data and getting some machine learning over that. Let's go forward a fair bit on this. So I'm just going to play this because I was going to run a demo, but with a Wi-Fi sort of problem that I'm having. So I'm just going to run this video, but what we're going to show is, let's go forward a bit, is the actual pathway that we've created as a sample is that in Content Manager, a particular record type is created, and we know what the record type is and what it means. So that event then comes into Event Hubs, and that Event Hubs is streamed into Streaming Analytics. And a query is written over that to say, if it's a record type of something, 51 I think from memory from the demo system, and if it comes from this particular system itself, keeping in mind that Content Manager you can have 1 or 20 different Content Manager applications in the same environment. So each one is its own business set. So we also separate those, so we can have an event that comes from a demo Content Manager versus production, which gives us a chance to actually test and test and prove stuff in demo mode. So, you know, if it was a record type of 51, as an example, that means we need to create a new Teams channel. So because we know it was an object created, it didn't already exist, it's brand new, and it's got the right record type, let's take that, push that to a function. Now the function will then interrogate, let's go forward a bit, the function will interrogate the Content Manager, because don't forget the event is just a discrete piece of nothing. It just says, hey, a record has been added. It doesn't tell us anything else, and we don't want it to either. We need to keep these lightweight and small and just react to them. So in this particular case, this is Content Manager that you can see. I've paused this, and as an example, I've got a record type that's MS Team. I've got another record type which is MS Channel. So in the actual application, once I create those, and you saw quickly, I'll go back because that's pretty cool. So we can actually monitor the logs of Streaming Analytics and Event Hubs and anything, I guess. But by monitoring the log output of the function once it gets there is pretty cool. So we can see it's actually happening. That's great. We come down to Teams. Now the Teams function that does this, it's a graph call. So we do a graph call, we get a token, we do our usual authentication stuff. Great. And in this particular example, as well as creating a 10-minute channel, we're going to put a new physical Word document into this Content Manager. Now this is a fairly common request, and this is a scenario which is we're going to see a lot more of, obviously. You know, with the pickup of Teams and the use of it, there's a natural need to extend products into it, if not actually move away as a business process. Content Manager itself is a big beast of a thing, and it sits in the enterprise in a fairly critical role. But you know, the users being users, they want to use the product in a much easier fashion. Teams just works. All right, so in this recorded example, I've done a team creating a new channel. So every time I do something in this content manager, an event is being created and fired. It's going into hubs, it's going to streaming analytics, and then I'm interrogating that and I'm doing some stuff. And there you'll see. So this particular, seeing the Teams test, see the Teams test, I've got a new channel. You'll also note that we understand that once you create a new team, general is just one of the channels that is created as well. So we put that in the concept manager, because what we need them to do is to synchronize the documents between content manager and Teams. Right, this is really important, because in the end, there's no point having a system where you are working on a document in Teams or the Microsoft environment when your EDRMS preferred platform is content manager. Doesn't really matter where they are, but we don't want to work on documents in two places. We only want to work on a document in one place. So using event reacting out of content manager, we can then react into Teams. And with Teams, of course, with Microsoft, anything that happens in this platform, we can then react to, and we can do a bunch of cool stuff. It's getting to a point where there's not much we can't do in one or many ways. And that's that. Look, I'm probably talking this to death, so I'm just interested if there's any comments or suggestions or guidance. Maybe from you, Dan. You're a bit of an integration. You are an integration specialist. So I'd be interested in some of your thoughts on perhaps this approach and the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I've done a lot of demos on Event Grid before, but it's great to actually see a solution, a real world solution using it. And yeah, it's terrific to have those features. And what a great example you gave there of using streaming analytics and stuff. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, Event Grid is a particular favourite for lots of reasons. So I'm just trying to make it fit better into our needs. But in the end, it's not about that. It's about the best and easiest way to get a result. And we're achieving these results in such a short period of time compared to how we used to design solutions. It really is like a big Lego set. You pick your pieces, understand what they do, and put them together.
Awesome. Well, we've got a couple of questions that have come up. So the first one's from Bertus, and it says, would Azure Monitor give you the possibility to set up an alert and call a workbook to do the work you need?
Look, I guess so. The monitor is an event itself on a service, isn't it? So I don't know that we could get the third-party event into a service and then actually interrogate that from a monitoring point of view. But hey, I'm not so sure. Maybe we can. I don't know the answer, but it's definitely worth looking at. And it's interesting because we're creating a solution with Microsoft's Azure services to manage and route events, and yet all of the possibilities that we can get out of that are based upon the same event systems within the platform. So yeah, monitoring is an event process. So definitely worth a look at, but I just don't know.
Great. Okay. The only other comment that we had was more of a request, which is if I could post the link to the video that apparently nobody could hear the sound on in the opening presentation. And I've done that. I've pasted it in the chat, so that's there. I'll also make sure that I paste the link in the comments on the meetup site as well, so anybody that missed that can go ahead and catch it there, which would be really good. Awesome. Did you have anything else, Errol?
No, look, I don't at this stage. Typically of this sort of presentation, it seemed more structured at the start, but starting to go into some of those rabbit holes. But look, I'm happy to sort of go further deeper if someone wants to. But I think that's, it's more about actually identifying real business scenarios and how do we solve them. You know, if I could just play with Azure services, then I'd be happy. But that doesn't solve the real problems, does it? And you know, I think the highlight. I think everyone here already knows this, but some of the scalability and some of the management of this stuff, it's just awesome. When you talk about you know, event grids, and I think the first 100,000 actions on an event grid are free, and then it's like, I think it's 14 cents per million or something. So if you had 20 million event grid actions, and that's in, out stuff, you know, it might cost you $20. I'm exaggerating. It's probably $8.50. It's ridiculously insane, the cost effectiveness of these services.
That's right. It is incredible, isn't it? Wow. All right. Well, there's no more questions.
Okay.
So with that, yeah, thanks so much, Errol. That's been a really excellent and very enlightening presentation. As I say, it's always really good to see people working through real world problems and applying these amazing technology. Oh, sorry, we have one more question that just popped in. It's from Sarah, and he said, I had a quick question for the presenter. What sort of data volumes is he processing through Stream Analytics and Event Grid?
So in our scenario, we're talking maybe 20, 30,000 a day. So you know, it's significant, but it's not in the same volume as the IoT Hub sort of data. You know, we talk millions a second as being a high end. When you're talking thousands a day, it really is lightweight. so yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from what I recall when doing my presentations is that Event Grid was designed to handle 10 billion events per second in any region. So because it is applied to it is a service available in a region. So I guess if you get a very, very busy and noisy region, then it could be a bit of a problem there. But I'm going to follow up Sarah's question and ask you, have you noticed any or been able to track whether there have been any failures or whether there have been retries happening, or has it been pretty much very successful?
It just works. Yeah, we haven't had. Now, maybe I'm not picking them up, but no, we definitely haven't had any. And I've been doing a lot of work on this stuff, and at this volume especially. And I know that when you talk about the plus or minus error rate on the high-end volume stuff, it's kind of scary how good it is. But it's the same, isn't it, with event hubs and with all of these services? Whether there's 4 nines or 6 nines of availability / performance. Yeah, look, we haven't had any dropout, and I'm really keen to get more into event grids and the higher volume on that, and to see what the retry counts are and to see what that means. And of course, that then relates to you know, what is consuming it and what's that availability. You know, we're doing some great work on durable functions as being the consumer, where you know we can do a fan out. So if I can receive 1,000 operations into an event grid, into a function that's durable, and then I fan those out into operations, all of a sudden we're having some real fun.
That's right. All those that level of events and traffic through Event Grid, the real issue then is what happens with functions, and you know, it's scaling out as a serverless service. That's when your bill can start to maybe mount a little bit. So
yeah. Well, we still run our functions. So we still run our functions on apps rather than consumer based, because of still a bit of cold start, and there's still a bit of, you know, we just want to be just always on, always running. So I guess that'll change in time, but at the moment we still run them on a service app rather than consumption.
That's right. Yeah, you got to keep those things in mind when you're architecting solutions. You know, architecting for the cloud, especially serverless type stuff, is very, very different than the classical model that we used to do, where you had a finite number of resources. You know,
yeah.
Think about and how that works. So fantastic. So someone has posted that they've enjoyed the presentation and currently have a similar use case, so very useful, thank you. And one more question from Sarah is, how would you account for the failures if there were any? And I think the answer to that is you see them in the portal, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, if I can just quickly go back, we can have a look at that, and we can actually set up a monitor on that as well, which goes back to the monitoring of it. Teams, sorry, monitor, streaming. So yeah, we have everything is. So if you come down to here, we've actually got the failure counts and retry and errors for the actual connection itself. So I've got this set of the different time frame, but we could actually set a monitor on this so that if an error was to happen, then we could actually be notified and go through the normal event monitoring, service monitoring type stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, at the moment, for me, it's a case of just monitoring this, which is not efficient really in the big scheme of things. I mean, as soon as you have someone sitting there watching it, then we're losing the battle, aren't we? So look, I think going back to the question about monitoring as being a solution, and then how do we actually then know when there's been an issue? It's definitely something that I'll go and try now is cause a failure. And then put a monitor on it and see what we can do.
So you can send these events to Azure Monitor, right, and log analytics?
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. It seems like the questions have tapered off now.
Cool.
Last minute here for anybody to post something if they want. But yeah, fantastic. That was a really enjoyable and excellent presentation. So thank you, Errol.
It's fun.
So as people who attend this group regularly know, we very much appreciate our speakers, and we like to show our appreciation to them. And regardless of the fact that it's a virtual event, we don't want that to interfere with our ability to show our appreciation to our speakers. So thank you very much, Errol. I that you enjoy your bottle here.
Thanks. And look, it's already poured.
That's fantastic. That's
you see, we've just converted this process. and cheers, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, that's excellent. One more comment from Sarah that says, thank you for the great presentation. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you for coming and joining us tonight, and to everyone else too who came along. So we will have this recording up on the website hopefully within the next few days. Just give me probably until the weekend until I have a chance to do that, and then and then look at the meetup site to see what we've got lined up on December. Hopefully we'll have a couple of people with some short, sharp presentations there, and we'll wrap up the year. And I'm sure many of us will be very glad to see the back of 2020. So
oh yeah,
definitely look exciting, having some excitement for what holds next year. So with that, one more comment from Bertus. Thanks, guys. Very informative. Thank you, Bertus. And great. With that, have a great evening, everyone. Thanks, Errol. Thanks, Damien. And great. We'll see you in a month.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers, guys.